Good morning. You're tuning in to the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting work session. It is Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. It is 9:03 a.m. This is a virtual meeting. For public attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel or join by calling 360-252-9020, PIN number 1234. I am Carolina Mejia, Chair of the Board. Our Vice Chair, Ty Menser, is excused for today. And I am joined by Commissioner Gary Edwards in the boardroom, as well as County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and other staff members are in the boardroom. Robin Campbell, our Assistant County Manager, joining us via Zoom, as well as many other staff members. Today, we'll start off our agenda with our setting item, which is our COVID-19 update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kurt Harden, Interim Director, Public Health and Social Services. This is the COVID update for today, February 22nd. We have been in the response for COVID for over 2 years, with the first case in Washington State occurring on January 20th, 2020. In Thurston County, total cases are 45,634. I will say that number is lower than we reported last week due to the State Department of Health is cleaning out duplicate cases in their database. So we have approximately 550 duplicate files that were deleted, but that's less than 1.2% of the total case count for Thurston County. But in the last 7 days, the number of cases that's been reported in Thurston County is 674. And in Thurston County deaths, unfortunately, total aggregate is 360. In the last 7 days, we've had 12 additional deaths. Our 14-day 100,000 case rate is 1,280, 1,280.1. To compare that to last week on February 15th, it was 1,635.4. And then on February 8th, it was 2,424.1. So the trend is for the 14-day average case rate is going in the correct direction, right direction, and it is going down. Total hospitalizations year to date is 2,179. I should say that's COVID to date over the last 2 years. Current COVID patients are 38, with one that's suspected of having COVID. So to compare that to, again, the trends, last week it was 54 patients, COVID patients in the hospitals, and 2 weeks ago it was 81. So again, trending in the right direction, a good direction. The number on vents currently is 1, and last week that was 5. So that's going in a good direction as well. ICU available capacity, bed capacity is 3 adult beds, but 0 pediatric beds. And then our acute bed availability is 21 adults and 0 pediatric. And again, a reminder, elective surgeries are resuming in the hospitals. In our congregate care outbreaks, we have 181 congregate care outbreaks since March of 2020, and currently 45 congregate care outbreaks that are current or under investigation. And then our vaccination status, this is all as of February 12th. Our vaccines, February 16th, and our vaccine status, vaccine doses given in Thurston County is 499,869. The percent of people initiating vaccination in Thurston County is 71.3%. The percent of people fully vaccinated is 64.4%. Percent of people in Thurston County that's over the age of 16 initiating vaccination is 81%. And the percent of people fully vaccinated over the age of 16 is 73.4%. Population initiating vaccine over the age of 5 is 75.4%. And then again, the number of people fully vaccinated over the age of 5 is 68.1%. And number of people who received an additional dose, their third dose, is 97,000 as of February 16th. A couple of items on vaccination. We continue our Capitol Mall vaccination clinic. However, we're changing from 7 days a week to 5 days a week due to the change in demand. So the days that we will be closed at the Capitol Mall are Tuesday and Wednesday. Will be no Capitol Mall vaccinations. That's the lowest demand days that we've seen at the mall. So we're going to go ahead and do the mall vaccination will be Thursday through Monday. On Saturday, February 26th, we'll also have a vaccination clinic at the Tenino Quarry House in Tenino from 10 to 1. And for all vaccinations, appointments are encouraged by going to our website, but also walk-ins are welcome. For testing status, yesterday we were testing at the Tenino Quarry House and Rainier Sportsman's Club. Today we're testing at the Rochester in Rochester from 10 to 1 in the roof parking lot next to the Boys and Girls Club. Tomorrow we'll be testing at Lacey from 10 to 1, and that's at 3811 Pacific Avenue in Lacey. Thursday, we'll be testing at the Union Gospel Mission from 10 to 1. And then Friday, we will be testing at the Evergreen State College from 10 to 1. And again, all test sites are planned for 10 to 1, but we'll close early if testing capacity is reached. And now I'd like to turn over to Dr. Abdulmalik for some more updates.
Good morning, commissioners. I just had 2 updates that I wanted to share. So all of our trends are looking encouraging, as Interim Director Hardin shared, in terms of we're seeing decreased transmission, decreased numbers of new outbreaks, decreased hospitalizations. There have been some changes to the vaccination schedule from the CDC for folks with moderate to severe immunocompromise. So these are folks who have had a solid organ transplant, who may be undergoing chemotherapy or may be on chronic high-dose steroids, among others. And the specific change that has been made has been moving is adding a booster dose for a total of 3 doses for folks that initially received the J&J vaccine. Pfizer and Moderna continue to be the recommended vaccine for additional doses by the CDC. The other change that was made just for folks in the moderate to severe immunocompromised category was moving the timing of the booster dose for those who have received Pfizer and Moderna from 5 months to 3 months or more. This is in addition to the additional information we've received regarding the timing of COVID-19 vaccine approval or COVID-19 vaccine data review by the FDA for the 6-month to 4-year age group, which we're anticipating that the data for a 3-dose series to be available in early April and review to happen then. So that's one promising piece and update. The other piece that I wanted to share is that the governor on Thursday discussed changes to the state indoor masking requirements starting on March 21st, 2022. While there is a lot of work to be done in terms of working through the specific guidance, what we anticipate is that masks in certain areas may not be required. So specifically mentioned were schools, recreational areas, grocery stores. However, masks will still be required on public transportation, as that's a federal mandate, as well as in high-risk settings in terms of healthcare settings, long-term care settings, congregate shelter settings, and settings where there's a high risk of transmission, and or the people who would be exposed are at high risk of severe disease. So this is we are continuing to work with our state partners in terms of working through the specifics around masking and these mitigation measures. And with that, I'm open to any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abdulmalik. Thank you, Kurt. Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Have we made a decision yet to start recognizing natural immunity for those that have recovered from this coronavirus? some jurisdictions have, and I'm just wondering if we've stepped up to the plate yet.
So we continue to follow CDC and DOH guidance with regard to the timing of prior infections. So we still follow the CDC guidance, where for folks who have been infected within 90 days, and their infection has been confirmed by testing, we do take the likely antibody protection that they have into account. I'm happy in terms of ongoing, in terms of other features, that would be in terms of transmission trends, we also acknowledge that prior infection does play a role in the number of people who may be susceptible to future infection as well. But those are the two main areas in which we've been considering it in alignment with the data released by the CDC.
Okay, so we're still requiring some kind of a mandate for vaccination, regardless if we've had people that have had it recovered, or whether or not people still get the virus, even though they've been vaccinated, right? That's still where we're at.
To be clear, on the public health end, we look at what the risk of infection is. So for us, we're looking at that 90 days, and we continue to follow the CDC guidance in terms of folks being up to date on their vaccination status when considering quarantine guidance. So with up to date being fully vaccinated, as well as having boosters that are available to folks. So that's the public health side. The vaccine mandate piece is the executive branch, and follows its own pathway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions. Our next item is homeless strategies. And I see Keely.
Good morning, Commissioners. Brief update for you today. Keely Marino from Public Health and Social Services. Great. So I'm going to start, as I usually do, with our rental assistance update for the week. Community Youth Services has served Thurston County households between the ages of 18 and 24 to the tune of 201, so 201 households of youth and young adults. I wanted to provide a correction from previous reports that I've given around CYS. Their Excel spreadsheet that they send me on a weekly basis was adding all of the year to date into those who were in progress or waiting for landlord signatures. And so it was a very inflated number. So actually, in terms of those who have completed their applications and waiting for landlord signatures, there's only 11 households in that process, and then another 10 households with appointments. So they're moving right along. And then with Community Action Council, they have served 3,922 Thurston County households. Spending or paying out $26.7 million in rental assistance at this point, and about $1.26 million in utility assistance. They do, their last appointment will be able to be booked by the end of this month. And we are still waiting to hear from Commerce around when the extra rental assistance dollars may become available to us. Other than that, we have the point in time count, the annual homeless census this week. It is officially counting Thursday night, the 24th of February. This was postponed from the original date. Typically, it's done in January, the 3rd or 4th Thursday of January, but that was delayed due to concerns around COVID and the Omicron variant in particular. So we will be conducting a fully surveyed count, which means last year we just did a head count. This year we will be doing surveys, complete surveys, with individuals who are unsheltered, and then we'll be gathering data from the homeless management information system for those who are staying in shelter. So that will be taking part on Thursday night and Friday. We have folks that are going out into the encampments from our outreach community, and then just all jurisdictions participating at various levels and making sure that we get as accurate an accounting as possible. This Wednesday is the Regional Housing Council, so that is available for the public to sign up for public comment or to just attend. If you search for Thurston County Regional Housing Council, pops right up on Google, and you can register to attend or register to make public comment, and that is Wednesday from 4 to 6. We have extended the period of time for the meetings from 90 minutes to 2 hours, so we will be meeting from 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. tomorrow. And then finally, just a hotel update on Friday, this past Friday. The residents at Olympia Inn who were staying there who were displaced from the Deschutes encampment by the city of Olympia, many of them were exited due to us running out of funds. There were a number of folks that were able to remain due to other circumstances. There are 4 of the rooms were youth and young adults, and they are being covered by community youth services. And then we have a few 3 rooms that we're going to continue under the Olympia Mutual Aid Program hotel program. So that's starting up today officially. And on that note, all residents that have been staying at the Super 8 Hotel in Lacey, who were also displaced by the city of Olympia from the Deschutes encampment, will be moved today. 20 of those rooms will be moved over to the Olympia Inn to keep everyone over in one hotel. And the others will be exited to primarily given some survival gear and moved out. So we do have we're still waiting for some information and updates on those who were able to get into treatment beds. I haven't had that update yet. I know that there were 2 or 3 households that were waiting for those beds to open up, and at least 1 or 2 did move into a housing project. A number of them are in queue for, and they will remain in the hotel program because they have a direct line to potential housing in the next few weeks. And that is my update.
Thank you, Keely. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, Keely, on your point in time count coming up, have you included a question in there so we can verify where these folks are all from in their prior activities, whether or not they've, got a past paycheck or a mailing address or maybe a utility bill, so we can get a little better idea of where these folks are from?
Yeah, so we are a member of the Balance of State Continuum of Care. So one of 34 counties that the Department of Commerce is our COC, or our Continuum of Care. And they have issued the required questions for our survey. So we do ask, where was your last known residence? And based on the criteria, like last known address where you received mail. So we'll be able to gather that information with this survey.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Keely. My question was, 2 weeks ago, you mentioned there were some residents from that were in the Super 8 and the Olympia Inn that were interested in the LEAD program. Just moving forward with this plan, I just kind of wanted to know how that's going to work out moving into the future.
So there were, if there were households that were identified as being potential candidates for the LEAD program, they will remain with OLIMAP in their hotel program. They'll just move over to the other hotel. So I don't have those current numbers of but how many individuals may be moving into or be actively involved with the LEAD program, but I can get those. But I know that that's still the plan for some of the residents.
Thank you. Questions, County Manager? Assistant County Manager?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Keely.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 3, which is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for February 22nd, 2022. And so with that, we'll call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance, Commission's Vice Chair Menser won't be here. Commissioner Edwards, will you do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Do you mind stating that Commissioner Mason is being excused for the rest of the week?
Yes, and so Vice Chair Menser has been excused for the rest of the weeks. So we will be making some adjustments this week just to be sure and cover his schedule. Okay, then it would be the approval of the Tuesday. Was that good enough, County Manager?
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
Before I move forward, okay. Then we'll move forward with the approval of the Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022 agenda. Approval of the board meeting minutes from February 15th, 2022. And then at 2:05, there'll be a public works, introduction of new public work employees.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You will hear this afternoon from the Director of Public Works, Jennifer Walker. She will introduce Keith Pulley, Jihan Berger, and Jerry Mills. And every time the board has the opportunity to welcome county employees, this is a great deal, considering that we have such a difficult time in recruiting new employees. And this is not just Thurston County, it's just a national issue. But a great deal to have new employees coming in and the board, giving the board the opportunity to say welcome.
That's great. Commissioner Edwards, comments, questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Moving forward, we'll do an opportunity for the public to address the board. County Manager, anything we should expect?
I believe you will receive some public testimony. You received some written testimony from a citizen yesterday, so I would assume he will provide public testimony this afternoon.
Thank you. Then County Manager's update.
Yes, you received last week an item that perhaps needed to follow up. You received a testimony from a county employee related to the employee testing mandate. I have that item later on your agenda today because I believe that requires a broader conversation. So if you don't mind, maybe waiting until later on your agenda today to discuss this matter.
Okay. Okay, moving on. I didn't see Commissioner Edwards raise his hand, so I'm going to assume he didn't have any.
No, no comment. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so moving on to consent items. Item 3A, which is the appointment of the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Your review, not you, Madam Chair, but the board reviewed this item last week where you will be considered appointing Mr. Joseph Richardson as the City of Young representative and the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. He's a council member, newly elected, I believe, to the Young City Council, and his term will end on March 2023. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee is composed by many members, elected officials representing the different jurisdictions, as well as representing private businesses, including representatives from the agricultural, and also representatives of the industry. And that is a very comprehensive board. I believe Commissioner Mejia is currently serving as the county representative of this board. And for your consideration is for you to appoint Mr. Joseph Richardson.
I see Jeff on here. Jeff, any additional comments you would like to add?
I don't believe so. I think the county manager pretty much stated the facts.
Thank you. Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Okay, moving on to the next item, which is along the same lines, appointment to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item last week. Now you, Madam Chair, the board, and for you to consider the appointment of Mr. David Nightingale as the private business representative in Thurston County to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. The Solid Waste Advisory Committee reviewed the application of Mr. Nightingale and has recommended for you to approve his appointment. And I believe on the SWAC meeting held on February 2nd, 2022, unanimously, the SWAC committee passed a motion for the board to consider appointment of Mr. Nightingale. And his appointment, if the board approves, will be from February 2022 to February 2025.
Anything to add, Jeff?
Yeah, the county manager, I think covered that pretty well. And this, again, I just want to mention that this is for the business representative, and Mr. Nightingale is an environmental consultant currently working from Olympia.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am?
Yes, and I'll just double, Mr. Nightingale came and spoke at the previous SWAC committee meeting, and it's just really exciting to get this position filled up. I know we've been kind of on a struggle to get these positions filled, so I'm glad it's getting filled. Okay, with that, we'll move on to the item C, which is the approval of the voucher list. And are there any comments or questions on that? None. We'll move on to department items, and items 4A with central services, request for proposals for atrium furniture, fixtures, and equipment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is the next step in the process of some county offices and departments will move into the 3000 Pacific. This particular request is for you to consider approving a request for proposals for us to secure a vendor that we can start working on providing furniture, fixtures, and equipment to outfit the 3000 Pacific building. Last week, a conversation between Commissioner Messer and Commissioner Edwards was related to the AG's opinion that was rendered whether the use of the REIT $1 was an adequate way to pay for all the elements within the 3000 Pacific move. Reed reported last week from staff, this particular question was addressed last week in a couple of occasions in an executive session. And I believe the question was whether the board will consider securing a revised or updated AG's opinion, that will be the Attorney General's office opinion related to this particular use of funding sources. So that is why a legal opinion from the AG's office is not that it's granted in the next week or two. It takes a little time. But before I get into additional details to that, I'd just like to open up for the board's conversation on that. And I don't know if you want to have this item moved to the next week. Really, so that needs to be part of this conversation. And Elizabeth Petrich is here, I believe. And I asked her to come. Yes, right there. And she has been able to review the AG's opinion, obviously, and she might be able to provide perspective and answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I do have questions about the public gifting issue that may be involved here, as far as what items will be permanent to the building versus which items will the county maintain ownership with. So that's kind of my concern as to how we proceed with this. Do we have an answer for that? That'd be one question.
So I don't know what the actual question is, Commissioner, but I believe we addressed that in a couple of executive sessions last year when the board was considering the financial elements moving into the 3000 Pacific. All that was stated in at least 3 executive sessions where the board was provided this financial strategy was within the context of the law. So I don't know if Elizabeth will feel comfortable to step out of what the conversation that it was given to you in an executive session, maybe in a couple of 3 last year, but certainly whatever the board likes to proceed on this.
I do have a concern, Madam Chair. My concern is that about 2 years ago, in Stevens County, a Superior Court judge removed all 3 commissioners for public gifting of money is what the problem was. I believe that those 3 commissioners were very intent on doing the right thing. I don't know them, don't know anything about what they had in mind, but in the end, the court recognized that it was illegal gifting of public money to private private individuals. Those commissioners did not get reinstated by appeal, and they were required to pay the amount of money designated back to the county, which was above and beyond their bond. So even though they were well-intended, everything fell on the shoulders of those county commissioners. I don't know their structure over there, if they had staff advising them or what the issues were, but staff was not held accountable to the action, but the county commissioners were removed from office. So that is obviously a big concern of mine when it comes to gifting. And we've had allegations made by individuals here in Thurston County that claim that is public gifting. And we don't have anything in writing as a legal opinion from our legal advisor. And apparently that becomes a problem, because I know we have discussed this in executive session. And every time we discuss this, it's been in executive session. So I'm kind of at a disadvantage as to what I can comment on that takes place in an executive session. We don't have anything written to fall back on for a defense when we might say, well, we're acting on advice from counsel. And that's always verbal. And so that bothers me that we don't have written advice. So as far as if you want to have more discussion on this at a upcoming meeting, I'm fine with that as well. So however you wish to proceed, but I'm very nervous about public gifting of funds.
Okay. I don't see any staff members jumping on, so I'll just provide my comments. You know, in an effort not to keep beating a dead horse, my suggestion is going to be to move this item forward to next week, because we have addressed the issue of public gifting and we are following council's legal advice. And so at this point, let's move this forward on to next week, where the three commissioners will be present, if that's okay with you, Commissioner Edwards.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
Okay. Just in an effort of time.
So I do have a question, if I may, Madam Chair. And Elizabeth,
Go ahead, sir.
is the AG's opinion related to the use of REIT $1 for this particular project? Is the age in which that legal opinion was rendered is relevant or not?
You're asking me if the earlier AGO opinion is relevant?
Yeah, it's still valid. Yeah.
I don't legal advice. In
Okay.
public, I'm happy to address this at next week's meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, County Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
I would like to point out that written AG opinions, and I think that one was from, I'm going to say it was from 1978. I'm not sure of the date on that. But that, I believe, is what's been referred to in the past. There was a law changed in 1992 that addressed some of these issues, but it's apparently with the AG's legal opinions, they don't remove legal opinions that were issued prior to a subsequent law change. So it's still on the books. That AG opinion is still there. Because we've had a lot of time that has went by and we've had some changes in the law during that period of time is why I am very concerned that we get this right. And so I personally don't think relying on an AG written opinion that long ago is relevant to what we're doing today. And whether or not the whole project can be handled through REIT funding, I think that's probably a completely different issue than my major issue at hand, which is gifting of public money to a privately owned business or building when it comes to the upgrades that are going to take place. And I believe those upgrades are millions of dollars. And I certainly don't want to be in a situation where I'm required, I think our bond is like $25,000. And if we do millions of dollars and that falls back on the individual county commissioners, I don't want anything to do with that. So that's why I am being quite insistent that we get written opinions. And written opinions not only from the AG, but written opinions from our own legal advice process and the prosecuting attorney's office. Then we have something at hand. When we don't have that, we just have a possible remembering of the way we covered a particular issue. And I'm just not sure that's adequate. So that's kind of where I'm coming from now. And I see the county manager has another comment.
And Robin first.
Go ahead, Superintendent Manager.
I have a question for Elizabeth. If we were to get written legal advice from you, Elizabeth, is that subject to attorney-client privilege?
Yes.
Yeah, so that too would not be disclosable.
And it might follow up. Commissioner Edwards has stated a law changed in early 90s. It was somewhat related. That particular issue was also raised last year, and that particular issue was also addressed in front of the board during an executive session. So, and that was addressed, and I believe I shared that with you last week on a one-on-one, Commissioner Edwards, as to how that was addressed in the early 90s. And again, I couldn't disclose that because it was part of an executive session. And but again, it was some of the steps we as a staff facilitated with your attorneys on the conversations, the issues that were raised, similar to have been raised today, they were raised last year before the board. The majority of the board, because he did not support that, Commissioner Edwards, moving into the 3000 Pacific. So I just want to follow up on the changes of the law in the early 90s, because that issue was raised last year, and that issue was also addressed in front of the board last year.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Everything that the county manager said was correct. I mean, we've been through this, but without a written opinion, I don't know all the particulars on why the Superior Court judge removed those 3 commissioners over in Stevens County 2 years ago. But the end result was they didn't get their jobs back through appeal, and they had to pay back the county. And I think originally they must have felt they were doing the right thing. The facts of their case are not identical to the facts that could develop here. I realize that. But it is a precedence that has been set. And as far as legal counsel saying that would be privileged information, I don't agree with that. I think that the public has every right to know what their elected officials are doing and why. And so where it might come out in some kind of a court proceedings, I have nothing to hide from the public. And I want the public to know and be very aware of every vote that I take and why I take it. So hiding behind the cloak of executive session, I don't feel is proper. And, you know, we've got a difference of opinion percolating here between myself and the county manager and possibly other members of the Board of County Commissioners, and that's fine. That's the process that we need to go through when we're having this public discussion and public debate on an issue. And the county manager was right. I did not vote for moving down to the 3,000 building. But that has nothing to do with proper expenditure of public money, and therein lies the problem. I don't think we have adequate protection to justify expending that money. I mean, I'm going to be asking about our voucher list to make sure that we aren't expending money right now on that project until we get something in writing. And on this issue on central services, and it might be A and B issues that are of concern. So out of fairness to my missing seatmate, I have no problem at all with waiting and where we can have a additional debate. I don't mind getting outvoted. I just don't want to vote for something that I feel is inappropriate expenditure. And so that's kind of where I'm at on that now.
Okay, so with that, I guess we'll remove items 4A and 4B onto the March 1st agenda.
Well, item 4A, you discussed that to move it. Item 4B, I don't know if that is the
I think
same.
that's what Commissioner Edwards just mentioned right now in his comments.
Is that?
Was that-
4B?
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure what we're doing is legit. So yes, I'm gonna say, until we can have further discussion on it, I'm gonna suggest that we have a full board to have that discussion. And then you could have a quorum that make a decision. As it is now, if you and I, Madam Chair, disagree on a particular issue, then we're stuck.
We're stuck, yeah.
And I want the process to continue as courteously as it possibly can. And I think it's just gonna have to wait.
Okay. And just for the public's information, if item 4B is a contract award for project development study. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knew what we were talking about when we're saying item 4A and 4B, sir.
I
Go
appreciate
ahead.
it, Madam Chair, because item 4B is related to awarding the contract for a consultant to start working on the remodel of the courthouse campus.
Oh, okay, so it has nothing to do with down below at the atrium?
Well, item 4A is for the furniture that you just discussed. Item 4B is a parallel process that we have laid out in terms of as offices and departments move into the 3000 Pacific, then we need to have a consultant to start working with the offices and departments who remain in the courthouse campus as to how the space is going to be remodeled.
Okay, I guess regardless of where the staff might move to, down there or maybe elsewhere here on the Hill, this sounds like a separate project that needs to go forward as we try to solve this issue of the courthouse complex and bringing it up to more modern standards. So I'm okay with B. I just thought the two were connected.
But as a matter for disclosure, the contract and the scope of work that we have with DLR Group includes the assumptions offices and departments will move to the 3000 Pacific. As a matter for disclosure, that is the umbrella of the scope of work with this particular firm.
If we find out that that becomes null and void as far as, I don't know, if a court agrees or the attorney general comes back and says, well, I don't know, I don't think you're doing this exactly right, and we don't move, then that throws a wrench in the whole process. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm just stating for disclosure,
Yeah.
what item 4B is.
Is there a time element on this that becomes a real problem if we wait on this item until next week?
No, you can have the both items. next
Oh,
week.
okay. Well, what do you think with that, ma'am? Is that gonna work?
Yeah, that was my recommendation, to move those two
Yeah.
items. And then I agreed with you, sir. Okay, so items 4A, the request for proposals for atrium furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and item 4B, the contract award for project development study, will be moved to the March 1st agenda, or whenever we have a quorum with the three commissioners.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So moving on to community planning and economic development. Item 5A is amendment to professional services contract number 415 for the Habitat Conservation Plan Environmental Impact Statement.
Yeah, no, thank you, Madam Chair. This item for your considerations to amend the current contract that we have with Confluence Environmental Company to add an additional $3,500 to their contract. That will make a total contract, total amount of $472,302. This additional amendment of $3,500, it will help us to continue with the process with Habitat Conservation Plan, particularly related to the actions related to the environmental impact statement and associated documents related to this plan. If you have any questions, Christina Chapeau is here too. And by the way, the funding source of this is Section 6, which is a federal grant.
Thank you, County Manager. Christina, anything you would like to add?
No, I do not. The county manager covered it. Great.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am. We've covered it quite a bit.
Okay, my question is the extra 3,500 that we're adding, what is it that it's going to cover?
It's covering the finalization of the environmental impact statement document itself. It's the FEIS that needs to that will be published here, we hope, soon. The contract itself was entered into in 2015, and we've done a pretty good job of staying within those 2015 dollars. But working in 2021 with 2015 dollars, it has stretched a little thin, and we do need to add some dollars.
Thank you for that. Okay. No further questions, comments? We'll move on to item 6A, which is a district court request for proposals for district court substance abuse monitoring.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is related to the budget the board authorized for the 2022-2023 biennial budget in support of the use of technology in lieu of incarceration. The board set aside $500,000 from the American Rescue Plan to be funded to secure an instrument, and again, to use technology in lieu of incarceration. This particular item for your consideration is to authorize district court to issue a request for proposal. They will secure the services of a vendor for substance abuse monitoring, and so they can start the process of moving forward on this particular item. This seems to be very important, at least from when the board discussed this particular request, because it allows to give yet another tool to avoid individuals not getting into jail for some of the crimes they have committed. Any questions?
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
And I see the Court Administrator, Frankie
Oh,
Peters
Frankie's
here.
Yeah.
Frankie, is there anything you would like to add?
Nothing at this time. County manager covered it perfectly. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. And I don't have any additional questions or comments either. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7A, Juvenile Court Probation, Sole Source Professional Services Contract with Heart Strides Therapeutic Horsemanship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for your consideration. Reissuing the contract with Heart Strides Therapeutic Horsemanship, and this is for the juvenile court in the amount of $53,120. And this particular contract performance is from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2023. Juvenile court has been using this the Horse Strides Therapeutic Partnership as part of their therapy program for youth ages 12 to 17 on civil and offender caseloads within Thurston County Juvenile Court. Your youth participate in a 6-week course that provides equine and peer support, and that will allow us individuals to go through this process. And again, that is a great program that has been very successful in the past. The board has supported this in the past, and this is just a renewal of this particular contract with this outfit. Any questions?
And I see Ted Bryan, Juvenile Detention Manager on screen.
I can't see my, oh, there's Ted.
Ted, is there anything you would like to add?
Oh, just really to follow up with what Mr. Chavez said, that it's been a successful program. Heart Strides is a sole source for us. This is under our TST funding as well. So thank you for the consideration.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. We've had quite a bit of coverage on this issue. Thank you.
Okay. No questions. Thank you, sir. No questions on my end either. Okay, thank you, Ted. Moving on to item Public Health and Social Services, item 8A, interlocal agreement with the City of Olympia for property acquisition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a follow-up to the action the board took on December 15, 2021 to authorize me to sign a memorandum of understanding with the City of Olympia. And this is to address the impacts of unsheltered homeless individuals living along Ensign Road. And this particular interlocal agreement is to purchase a property also known as the Franz Anderson property. And that is located within the City of Olympia boundaries, but off of exit 111, I believe, or 107, sorry. It has been in the works. The City of Olympia passed this particular interlocal agreement last week, I believe, and this is for your consideration. And again, this particular interlocal agreement outlines the purchase of this particular property, also known as the Franz Anderson property, and also includes investment to upgrade this property to make it suitable for RVs. They will serve us to move in their RVs from Ensign Road. Now, the long-term long-term plan of this property will be part of an asset. The Regional Housing Council can use it, and its partners can use to create affordable housing in the long term. So, but this is where we are. Last week, it was a conversation related to the maintenance and operations of this particular strategy, and the maintenance and operations needs to be addressed at the Regional Housing Council level, because this is going to be a regional asset, and the Regional Housing Council needs to be part of the conversation related to the operations and maintenance of this. Considering the circumstances and the conversation that has occurred in this particular item, we'll ask the board if you'd like to have this item on today's agenda or next week's agenda. But Tom is here Webster to answer any questions or provide additional perspective.
Tom, anything you would like to add?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Let's see, two issues. The first one is, the county manager mentioned that this is part of our process in dealing with the homeless. We haven't been very successful in dealing with this whole homeless junkyard stuff out on 101. This morning, it looks worse than it ever has. And so I don't know if we ought to use that as an example of when we spend money to do good things and we don't get anything done, that's gonna be the outcome. Now, I know that's not Tom's fault, but he's trying to manage something that there is a good example of what our community ends up looking like if we don't handle it properly. My second question is the funding source that this money would come from is from where?
ARPA funds. And that was, as you may recall, Commissioner, that's part of the plan that you set aside for affordable housing, and the tune of just about $9 million. And that was part of the strategy from the beginning to use a portion of that to go through this process.
And how many dollars are we talking about expending on this particular project?
At this point, including what we have set aside is $1.5 million that is included on the interlocal agreement.
And that's our half, so Olympia's putting aside the same amount towards this?
Yes, sir. It's
So
50/50.
it's like a $3 million purchase?
No, it's the purchase itself is, I believe, is 1.5. The additional dollars is to help the implementation of the sites, the prep work for the site.
Okay, so the infrastructure bill would be the other $1.5 million.
Yeah, so it's overall.
And about how many RVs is this intended to handle?
I don't know how many left are inside road, but it's intended to bring most of them.
Tom, would you happen to know the answer to that?
We don't have a specific answer to that. We'll have to get on the property a little bit, but the hope is in the 30 to 40 range.
And then in the future, would that location be utilized maybe for I don't know, homeless high-rise? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Affordable housing?
Yes.
Yeah,
Affordable housing, high-rise type.
Yeah, that is the
activity.
intent, because as we go through and move some of the RVs, eventually those individuals involved within the process will be moving to the next step and providing some permanent housing.
And have we had a public hearing on this particular issue on this location?
No.
Has Olympia had a public hearing yet on this
No.
location?
But this conversation has been discussed in public, including the city council.
And they've already made a commitment?
They already approved the local agreement. And again, if the board is not ready, the two of you, Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner, was to have this item on today's conversation, I can probably move this to next week.
Is there a time issue that this is going to get affected by?
Yes, it is a time issue since we are negotiating purchasing of a property.
Okay, well, I believe that the chair and I can deal with this as requested. So
Okay.
it's up to the chair, but I think I'm okay.
Okay, sir. My question, Tom, is in regards to the interlocal agreement. This just covers basically the purchase of the property, right? Not not the next steps.
Yeah, the purchase and the initial development, the preparation of the property. Yeah, so it does not deal with, as Ramiro said, it does not deal with the operations of the property. Other than to say that it's the Regional Housing Council who will be responsible for kind of the operations funding.
Okay. And then I don't have any additional. So Commissioner Arbors, are you comfortable with moving forward with this item, or would you prefer to move it to next week?
No, I think we're okay. We can move ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item 8B, Memorandum of Understanding for Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Funds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you may recall, the Community Development block grant serves on a rotation basis where we go through 1 year is the city of Lacey, the other year is the city of Tumwater, and the next year is the city as the county as well as the South County cities. The city of Olympia is not part of this rotation since there is a qualified jurisdiction. They receive their own direct allocation from CDBG. Last year, the city of Lacey qualified to be a jurisdiction that can have a direct allocation from CDBG dollars. The result of that conversation, they agreed to continue with the rotation program. So the item for you today is to approve an MOU. They formalized that process. Last Friday, I met, and Jacinda and Tom met with the South County mayors and developed the next steps that includes the terms and conditions of this MOU, which includes they will be moving forward with a request for proposals. That includes a public process. And also it will include to accept applications for eligible public infrastructure, public facilities, public service, and economic development activities. And I will let Jacinda to lay out the next steps in terms of the timing. And again, this item before you is just to formalize the process that we have envisioned with the South County mayors. It was a little bit of a shift, just to clarify, since this MOU was approved by the South County cities last year. And we were in the process for the board to consider executing this MOU. But at that point is when the city of Lacey was going through the process of assessing whether they want to be their own urban entity or they want to be part of the regional process. When the city of Lacey they decided to remain within the regional process, they requested for all the jurisdictions involved in the CDBG allocation to set aside some of the allocation for affordable housing. That conversation occurred with the South County mayors, and that was not part of their decision. So we went back to what the original agreement they signed, approved back in last year. Just want to be a full disclosure as to how this sequence of events have occurred. Jacinda?
Good morning, Commissioners and County Manager Jacinda Stelchis, Office of Housing and Homeless Prevention. So as Romero mentioned, this was originally signed last summer, and then Lacey had initiated some discussions, hoping that everyone could agree on affordable housing set aside. Ultimately, the South County mayors didn't feel like that was the best use of the funds for their specific jurisdictions. And so we are moving forward with the MOU with just the South Counties. And as Romero mentioned, we will be we will be accepting proposals for public facility improvements, public infrastructure, public services, and economic development. That application will be released this week, February 25th. And then applications close April 1st. And that same group of mayors and the county manager representing unincorporated South County will review all of those proposals and decide which ones they choose to fund and at what level. The next steps from there is our office will prepare our annual action plan to HUD and send that in July. And then hopefully we will be getting our funds from HUD somewhere around September. And we'll move forward with contracting for those projects that were selected by the mayors and the county manager at that time.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, just one quick question. The city of Lacey made a recommendation that South counties didn't feel fit within their scope of activities. And consequently, did we lose any of the funding dollars because of that?
No.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. I'm good with it, ma'am.
So, kind of to add on to your question, Commissioner Edwards, because since we're not going to be in an MOU with the city of Lacey anymore, is that?
No, we are.
No, they're still there. That's what.
So they're still in that MOU.
Commissioner, I can speak to that a bit. So we will execute an MOU with the cities of Lacey and Tumwater. They, along with the South County jurisdictions, are all partners in our urban community for CDBG. We're just executing a separate MOU with Lacey and Tumwater, and that one will differ from South County MOU, primarily in the way that there will be a housing set aside. Those two cities have decided that they do wish to move forward with setting aside CDBG for housing related, affordable housing related activities. So there will be an MOU coming to you all for that partnership as well.
So can I ask how that's going to work, like on a rotational basis? Is it when it's going to go to Lacey, they will be setting aside a certain percentage of that to affordable housing, but when it goes to, let's say, either Rainier, Yalmar, Tenino, or Bakota, there will be no set aside. Is that how it's going to work?
Yes. So in this year, 2022, South counties will be, the funding will be awarded in the South County jurisdictions, Yelm, Tenino, Bakota, Rainier, and unincorporated Thurston County. And the mayors and our county manager will, again, decide how to award those funds within that geographic area. And then next year, we will move to Lacey. And then the following year, 2024, Tumwater. So Lacey and Tumwater in those consecutive years will have a housing set aside that they've agreed on. So they will award in 2 consecutive years funding for housing related activities. It'll just be this first year that housing will not be included, or solicited activity, excuse me.
Okay. And I don't have any additional comments, questions. Any additional comments or questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am. I think we got her covered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jacinda. Okay, moving on to item 8C, contract with Confluence Consulting Northwest for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Consultant, and I see Keely here. County Manager.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry. This item has been in part of the conversation with the board for the last couple of weeks. This item was on the board's agenda last week since Commissioner Mejia was now part of that. It was for today's. Now Commissioner Mensah is not here, and I know the Commissioner Edwards had some questions related to this particular item. As a matter of as an overall background, the Regional Housing Council set aside $150,000 as part of the process, where they will be securing a consultant to address the systemic racial issues as part of the overall process. And in fact, in October 5th, 2025, the Board of County Commissioners approved the issuance of a request for proposals to identify a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant for the Thurston County Homeless Crisis Response System. And again, this is a set-aside item. The Regional Housing Council put that last year. The board authorized this in last October, and we have gone through the process of selecting the consultant. And for your consideration is to award $150,000 to Confluence Consultant Northwest. Has been a lot of conversations about this, and I will ask the board if you like to continue on with this agenda item today, or you like to defer that to next week until you have a full board. And I know the timings of the issue, Kelly, but yeah. Anything else, Kelly?
No, that was a great summary. I'm just here to take any questions that you may have, commissioners.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, do the dollar amount, the 150,000 is coming from what fund?
That is coming from $2163, the document recording fees, and they are local funds.
So that goes to helping the homeless issue and housing in general, right?
Correct.
And if we did not issue this contract, we could utilize this money to solve a problem rather than purchase a piece of paper or whatever they're gonna make a recommendation for, right? So that's my concern, that I don't see that we're getting a very good return for our dollar invested, because I don't see the problem maybe as succinctly and what as my seatmates do, I guess. So yes, there is a problem with this. I'd rather see the money spent doing something rather than talking about something. So I know that can be debated. So I guess, Madam Chair, and, if you have other feelings about it, maybe this should be removed as the manager.
Okay, yeah, and I sat on the RHC and there was a lot of discussion about this last year in the funding work group when there was, when we discussed the set aside about having a DEI consultant come and work. And some of the main points of deciding to have this is because there are a lot of inequalities when it comes to the services and how our homeless respond crisis team really works, and what we can do better in terms to bridge that gap. And so, this is the reason. I know that $150,000 is a lot, and but the need is really there, and it's not only for the people that are receiving the services, but it's also within the people that are providing the services that we're seeing those inequalities. And so I think we heard it from Only Map and how hard it is to staff some of these. And when we've been doing RFPs, it's been kind of one of our guidelines to house these contracts. So, I definitely see the need in this. Of course, whenever we use money for something, we're taking away from something else. But this has been, I think, the first year where we've had this availability of funds that we can use for something like this to really take a big picture look at this. And that's why I'm in support of it, just because I think it's something that we need to look at, and we have the funds available now, instead of kicking the can down the road. Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I guess just as a follow-up to that debate, if you will, Madam Chair, I guess I shouldn't say that because that makes it sound like maybe somebody else disagrees with me. I think I'm pretty confident that our staff has their heart in the right spot. I guess that's where I'm going to say this. And that I can't imagine that they don't have adequate oversight on this issue to make sure that not only government employees that might be interacting with individuals, but contractors that are required to do certain things. I would think our staff is going to hold those folks accountable to make sure they do the right things, to make to be absolutely positive that we treat people fairly and treat everybody the same. I just think our staff is so in tune with making sure that happens that I just can't see taking money from an otherwise good program in which we would make expenditures that really solve something. I think we've already solved the problem because our staff is so considerate. And so that's why I'm opposed to this expenditure. I think we're already there. This is gonna, it's gonna go to somebody. It's gonna filter out to the community somehow, $150,000 expenditure. I just don't think it's gonna be prioritizing our money to be spent in the right way. I think we're already probably doing everything we can to make sure we're treating people fairly. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
Sir, can I add something to what you just said? This was not a decision by staff. It was actually by the elected officials, which included, mayor, it included mayor or ex-mayor, past mayor J.W. Foster, it included representative from Lacey Councilmember Cox, it included Tumwater Councilmember, I cannot remember the name right now. It included an Olympia council member and as well as many others. And so, it wasn't staff who decided to move forward with this. It was the elected officials who decided from the RHC funding work group that this was needed, and staff supported it because there are, they are definitely the feet on the ground, and they're seeing the issues that are going on, and that's why they really supported and recommended this, because it's not something that they can cover on their own, and it's not something that they really can cover. And while I do agree with you that our staff are really in tune and they're amazing, it's not something else that we can add to their plate, especially right now as they're dealing with multiple issues within the RHC, as well as multiple issues going on with the several encampments that we have. I don't think we should add something else to their plate right now when they are definitely very busy. So I don't think I'm going to convince you on this. So I guess we can move it on to next week. Go ahead, sir.
And I guess I would just end this discussion possibly with, oftentimes I don't agree with some of our other elected officials. And so that's nothing new. And I just have a differing opinion on the priorities of the way we spend the taxpayers' money. That's all. So I do respect your position very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll move this to next week's conversation. Or when we have a full board.
There you go. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Keely. Okay, moving on to our next item, which is Public Works, and it's item 9A, contract award for Lake Lawrence Submerged Aquatic Vegetation Control. And that is connected with item 9B, contract award for Long Lake Submerged Aquatic Vegetation Control.
That is correct, Madam Chair. Item 5A, 9A, 9B are related. One is, the first one is for Lake Lawrence for submerged aquatic vegetation, and for you to consider approving a contract $350,000. And item 9B is related to Long Lake, and this particular contract is for your considerations not to exceed $480,000. There's been a lot of conversation. The board received a briefing related to water quality on lakes. Staff provided some perspective related to that. And at this point is, for the board to consider moving forward on the next steps. So look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, County Manager. Paula, do you have any additional comments you'd like to provide?
I have no additional comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Edwards, questions, comments?
No, I think we've had adequate discussion on both of these items. And I want to thank Paula for all of her hard work going into this process.
Okay.
And I'm
Thank
good
you.
to go.
Okay, I do have questions in regards to this. We did have a presentation 2 weeks ago in regards to this contract, and my question is, I'm still, Paula, concerned about pouring, all these chemicals into the lake. So I kind of just want to rehash the conversation that we had, and what this would be targeting.
Sure. So this contract is to target both noxious and nuisance weeds. The noxious weeds in both lakes are curly leaf pondweed and fragrant water lily. And this contract also will include weeds that grow to injury levels, which impede recreational uses and also just the flow of water. A lot of native plants in these systems can grow to unmanageable levels. And so these contracts are specifically targeted to using herbicides to reduce the biomass of these plants in the lakes when they reach injury levels.
Okay. And I do have a couple more questions on this, but I'm wondering if this is something that we can move on to possibly either next week, or, and I see Commissioner Edwards, you lifted your hand up.
Yes. I would like to point out that this is a timed issue, and if we don't get this accomplished at this time, then we're going to run afoul of the efficiency of putting a lesser amount of chemical in the lake to do a better job. Because the later we go into the year, you have different water temperatures and growth of target species, and we end up losing the benefit by a considerable amount. It'd be like delaying for a whole year this treatment process. So I just want to make an argument that I believe staff has really covered this well in conjunction with the lake management folks, and the end result is they also are very concerned about chemicals, and as am I. And we want to make sure we don't use any more than we absolutely have to accomplish the mission. And this has been postponed several times now until we find ourselves here today. And if we don't go out for this contract, we're inhibiting the ability to be effective, as effective. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So what a week will do, Tim, Paula, in delaying this until have a full board?
So a delay, it limits the ability to plan this year's treatment. I need to plan with the contractors and also coordinate with Fish and Wildlife for these treatments. So having the commissioner, or having the contractor, excuse me, in place means that we can start this process. It is time sensitive as far as plant growth goes. If we don't hit the plants when they're starting to come up before they reach maturity, then there's really no point in going forward with a treatment for some of these species that we're targeting. But really, at this point, starting the planning process is very important for the success of the program.
Commissioners, if I may, Tim Wilson, Water Resources Manager with Public Works. I would echo Paula's comments at this point. Delaying would cause significant concerns with these contracts for the year. And I would just add that Public Works is really making two recommendations here. We're recommending that we move forward with, that the board move forward with awarding these contracts to be managed under our current ecology issued aquatic plant and algae management permit and our IPM policies. So we would adhere strictly to both of those. And then longer term, Public Works would recommend an additional board briefing to discuss in more detail the integrated aquatic vegetation management plans that we've recommended for moving forward with these, discuss those in a little more detail and discuss with the board, perhaps accelerating the updates to those IVAMs.
Commissioner Edwards, I see your hand up.
Yes, I guess I'd just like to point out that everything that we're talking about here, these prescriptions are approved, I guess is the best way I can put it, or authorized by the Department of Ecology of the state of Washington. So they're pretty restrictive on what we can do and what we can't do anyway. And so the efficiency becomes the issue on the timing. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I understand the concerns. I just have several concerns of my own in regards to this. And, you know, in regards to just when we talk about water quality. You know, it's a really hard position for me because I do understand the timing of this. But I do have just several concerns. I mean, just with the briefing that we had and previously, and the quantity of chemicals that we're using on, you know, that has increased so much during this time. It just brings me a lot of concerns because, you know, at that point, you know, what's the detriment to the water? It's quite a bit, and the aquifers. So that's kind of just where I'm at. Paula, Tim, any additional?
Commissioner Mejia, certainly understand the concerns and the questions related to this. If it were kicked down the road a week, it is certainly something we could manage through. It does create, you know, just a little higher level of complexity and timing. We could certainly manage through that if the discussion needs to continue. But as mentioned by staff, we do feel, you know, ultimately staff is tasked with both meeting the expectations of the communities and, more importantly, managing the application of these herbicides in a environmentally responsible way. And that is something we take very seriously. Having said that, completely understand the concerns. So we are in support of however the board comes out on this.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Maybe one thing I don't know, that maybe staff could clarify this, because I don't know exactly if I'm going to articulate it properly. But when it comes to the amount of chemicals, maybe there's something that's increased, but something else has decreased because maybe they found out that that wasn't as effective or as and it may be less damaging to use what they're doing now or proposing now. So I do think that's where staff comes in with their expertise on this particular issue, that I think they're going to be very sensitive to doing the least amount of damage possible, if you want to call, you know, least amount of damage to the environment, if you will, or water quality as we move forward on this. So I don't know, Paula, if I covered that correctly or not.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So my next question for Paul and Tim, is there a plan, like moving towards the year, for the rest of the year on, how much chemicals we're gonna be using for treatment of the lakes? Is there, is this just gonna be, we're gonna treat this once and then it's gonna be whatever comes up, or is there a plan for treatment throughout the year?
Yes, there is a plan for treatment throughout the year, but the plans need to be finalized when the contractor is in place and it can begin the planning process with the selected contractor. But for some of the plants, curly leaf pondweed, we need to hit them before the plant has turion development, which is basically its seed packets, which it deposits through the lake. And the best time for that is when it's coming up, early spring. And another plant that is likely for treatment this year in Lake Lawrence is Commonellodia, which if we hit it with sonar early in the year, then we should have more successful control of the plant in the 2 subsequent applications that sonar requires. So those are the 2 chemicals that we are planning to employ in the lakes this year. And the following year, we'll see what comes back, but we survey the areas and we determine the treatment areas based on the density of the plants. So it's not a complete application of the lake. We treat certain zones and leave much of the lake untouched.
That's just for noxious weed. How about algae blooms?
So this contract does not cover algae blooms. Algae blooms are treated with phosphorus sequestration products, which is Phoslock and alum, which are not considered herbicides. So this contract is solely just for managing the plants on the lakes.
So we could see something come up later for that as well.
Yes.
Okay.
So is the desire of the board to keep those items today or move it to next week? That's really the question that I have.
Commissioner Edwards said you were ready, correct?
Yes, I would prefer that we act on it now. We've already had some delay on this issue. So I'm advocating for today. Thank you.
Okay, and I still have more concerns, but we'll leave it on the agenda for now, and then at BoCC, I can keep touching on the matters, and if at that time I'm not prepared, then we can move it on to next week. Does that sound good, County Manager?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. We'll keep it on the agenda for this afternoon. Thank you.
Any additional comments from staff?
No, thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Paula. Okay, moving on to item 9C, which is set a public hearing to consider a contract for solid waste operations, maintenance, transport, and disposal services.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This item is related to the long process in a way, which started back in 2018 with the Board of County Commissioners. They deliberated extensively on the many options the board had to go ahead and reissue the contract for solid waste operations, maintenance, and transportation and disposal services. In October 2018, the board directed the staff to go with a request for proposals. The request for proposals is a process in which provided a most transparent way as to how we're going to be issuing the contract moving forward. The request for proposals was issued last, yes. The request for proposal was released on January 13, 2021, and the proposals were due on April 8, 2021. Before that happened, between September 18 and November 18, 2020, before the request for proposals was issued, we entertained all the proposers to have reviewed the requirements of the request for proposals for us to have a tour of the facilities. That occurred And when the request for proposals was ended, we received three proposals. Through the scoring criteria, in which the board was informed, and on June 29, 2021, the Board of County Commissioners passed a resolution directing the staff to begin the contract negotiations with the highest scoring proposal. The highest scoring proposer was run through the process. The staff negotiated the contracts between July through November 2021. And the board has been provided, and on executive sessions, many details related to this particular contract. Now, on February 3rd, 2022, the Board of County Commissioners authorized staff to go ahead and submit an AIS, which is the item for you today, to set a public hearing. That is the next step in the process. And the public hearing for your consideration is for March 22nd, 2022 at 3 p.m. At this point is when you will be receiving public testimony related to the terms and conditions of this proposed draft contract. And if you have any questions, Jeff is here. I just want to give, mainly for the public, a little bit of a background as to what this item is related to. Jeff?
Thank you.
I have nothing else to add. I'm willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, I do have a question. Last year, when the board voted to move this forward to the outfit that we
Begin contract negotiations?
Yeah, we voted to move this forward with
Back in June.
with the vendor.
Yep,
Okay.
June 29, 2021.
And I voted with the board. We made a unanimous decision to move forward with that particular vendor. But during that vote, I was under the impression that all the requirements had been met. And the thing that I'm not sure of yet is this whole thing about the recycle activity that's to take place under some new licensing process over in Shelton. So my concern is, have we solved that particular issue? Have they actually received a license to move forward with a new recycling center, and that issue is no longer an issue? Because that's kind of a holdup for me on moving forward with this.
The company that you're referring to as they have submitted their applications with both the Mason County Public Health, ORCA, and with ecology as well. They anticipate that they should receive their full permits probably in about late May or so. And of course, this contract that we're proposing is not due to start until May of 2023.
I guess my follow-up question, and I don't know who would answer this, is if we do move forward with the public hearing, looks like on March 22nd of this year, that meets a legal requirement, I guess, that we do something in a certain time frame as we move forward. But my question to follow up to that is, when would we actually vote on the final award of the contract? Is it like within 30 days or 6 months or 90 days? Is there a time frame that's kind of in concrete now?
Yeah, related to that, staff has provided the board the schedule related to as to how this contract should move forward. The proposed item before you is to set a public hearing for March 22nd. And I'm not expecting at that time for the board to approve the contract, number one. This will give the board the ability to hear from the public comments related to the terms and conditions of this proposed contract. Depending on the amount and details of the public testimony, we'll follow up with a work session for the board to see any, what you heard at the public hearing, if there's any elements within the contract you would like to consider adjusting. And depending on that, yes, it is an expectation, at least from the staff level, the board taking action to continue in approving this contract. Because there is a time element in which they need time to build up enough infrastructure, the vendor, in order to take over in May 2023. It's not a simple contract. Professional services, somebody just provides services as soon as the contract is awarded. This is a little bit difficult because they need to build infrastructure, equipment, and everything else in order to effectively take over the operations, including this contract, by May 2023. Jeff, did I outline the timeline correctly?
Yes, and you made a good point. That is one of the big major concerns. Is that the part of the contract is that they're going to procure all new equipment to operate the facilities. At this point, as you know, with the supply chain issues, a year out, particularly for large, heavy equipment, the large iron is pretty close, and they might be hard pressed to get some of that hardware, particularly the equipment, drop boxes, transfer trailers, in time to be ready for May of 2023. So there is a time element involved with that.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
I would like to take this opportunity. I think I've spent a lot of time on this contract, on reviewing it, and I have to say, I think staff has put together a heck of a contract to benefit the citizens of Thurston County. So that really isn't my issue. My issue is the one issue in regard to recycle. And so what I'm asking here, if we go ahead with this hearing, then what's the date intended that we would approve the contract? Because I want to give the Shelton process adequate time to get completed, if that's going to be an issue, or at least have the license in hand as described by Jeff on this particular issue. So I'm wondering about, once we start the ball rolling, is there a place to say, oh, well, let's wait and see if they get that license or if they get that done or whatever. So that's kind of what I'm wondering about, the timeline from here on, and respecting what Jeff's talking about acquiring proper equipment. I want to make sure we match that as well. But my whole thing on the Shelton thing is that I'm just not satisfied that we were given the right information on that. And when that happens, when a vendor does something like that, it makes me question some of the other issues that might come up. Not that I have any particular issues, because I think staff's done a good job regardless whoever ends up with this contract. So what's the time frame that we're going to be voting on the contract, final awarding of the final contract? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, up to the public hearing as soon as feasible. And that is at least the request from staff.
Right.
Because it's times of the essence. The more obviously the board has the latitude and the ability to do whatever you think is appropriate. I don't want to take that away from you. At least what from the staff point of view is we're just working on lapse in the current contract, which is May 2023, which the board already extended a couple of times to allow this process to go through. The more that we wait on this contract, the more difficult it's going to be the vendor selected to perform and take over the duties on May 2023. I see Director Walker is here. She wants to add anything.
Good morning, Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. Thank you, County Manager. That is exactly what I was going to convey, this similar message that with respect to the recycling and the permitting of the facility, As we've said, we have all indications that that will be moving forward. And just as we did 22 years ago when the initial contract went out, there were lots of permitting items that needed to take place when that contract was awarded as well. And they fell in line, and all indications are that that will happen with this as well. And should it not, in the very off chance that it doesn't, we do have contingencies for addressing that.
Okay. I'm good with it, ma'am. We can.
Okay. I don't have questions, thank you. And then we'll go through our standing items. Commissioners will report on board work sessions and assigned committee meetings, providing updates on actions taken, as well as upcoming issues. And the county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule for the week of February 22nd, 2022. We will adjourn, and then we will move on to public hearings at 3. We have 2 public hearings. One is in regards to public hearing for the application of Eld Inlet Community Water Association for a non-exclusive franchise for a water system within Thurston County rights of way.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We received a request for a non-inclusive franchise for Eld Inlet. This item is the process in which the board will take a public hearing before you can consider accepting the application. And there is the next step in the process will be for you to consider approving the franchise agreement. So for your consideration this afternoon is 2 actions. One is to close the public hearing. And the second option, the second motion for your consideration is to accept the application. Depending on the public testimony that's within your purview, if you receive significant public testimony, we'll move those items a little bit later in terms of you accepting the applications for both Eld Inlet as well as the Scott Lake Maintenance Company. And again, is the second motion for each of the public hearings optional for you, depending on the public testimony that you might receive this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, thank you.
And Craig is here. I'm sorry, Craig, if you'd like to add any additional comments.
I have no additional comments. I'm here to answer questions if there are any. Thank you.
Okay. And have we received public comments on this, Craig?
As of right now, we have not received public comments for either of the public hearings.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then moving on to item B, which is the next one, which is public hearing for the application of Scott Lake Maintenance Company for a non-exclusive franchise for our water system within Thurston County rights of way.
Yeah, similar to the previous commissioner, the previous item is it's just a different area of the county. And for your consideration, you have the second item for you to consider and approving the application. And again, that's an option for you, depending how the public testimony goes this afternoon.
Okay. Any additional comments, Craig?
No, ma'am.
Additional comments. Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn the meetings and we will be moving on to our next item, which is the review of the BoCC draft agenda. Commissioner Edwards, would you like to take a break?
Hey, I'm good. Whatever staff wants to.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may, before you take a break, could I suggest a couple items that I had before you on the agenda setting? Could I suggest moving those because in some, I need the full board to have that conversation, if I may?
Sure.
So moving down, for your consideration is the low impact development, maybe moving that to next week, as well as the Modman Complex for next week. The Chehalis Drive, I can provide a perspective today, and not necessarily for you to take an action. And then the executive session that I have scheduled for you today, I really need the full board on that one.
Okay, and then can I also make a recommendation for the public testimony, the employee testing mandate?
I have a perspective on that, but I think it's just for the members of the public, because the conversation is a little bit larger. So I think it will be good to have this conversation today. That was a request of Commissioner Edwards. They wanted to have this conversation, and I will provide that perspective at that time today.
Okay. Okay, so we're moving the A7 low impact development code amendment, the Mottman complex. We're moving the executive session.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go ahead and take a break until 11, and then we'll be back. And we'll have to move through the items quite quickly since we don't want to be here till 1. Thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. And next item is, so we're back. It is 11:01 a.m. and our next item is reviewing the BoCC draft agenda for March 1st, 2022. So call the meeting to order. Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards. Approval of the Tuesday, March 1st, 2022 agenda. Approval of the board meeting minutes from February 22nd, 2022. Opportunity for the public to address the board. And then county manager's update.
Yeah, I will follow up any items that you may hear this afternoon, Madam Chair, that need to be followed up.
And then under consent items, we have two items. Item 3A, appointment to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And it is moved to, go ahead, County Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your consideration is appointing Council Member Jim Cooper to as a representative from the city of Lacey to the Thurston County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. And this will be from the March 2022 to March 2025. Similar to the items that you will be considering this afternoon in appointing to the same board. That will be the Solid Waste Advisory Committee.
I think you meant City of Olympia.
Yes, what did I say?
Lacey.
City of Olympia, thank you.
Jeff, any additional comments?
Now that you've corrected it to Olympia, no, I have no others.
I don't know what I was thinking. Oh, wow.
Okay, questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay. And then moving on to the next item, thank you, Jeff. It's the approval of the voucher list for the week of February 14th. And so with that, we'll move on to department items. Item 4A, set a public hearing for ordinance to expand the Board of Health members for RCW 7005.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So based on the conversation you had this morning, next week's agenda will be a little bit different, including the items that the board decided to move to next week. So item 4A for your consideration, you know, as a result of the legislature passing House Bill 1152, there is a reform to expand the Board of Health membership. And the Board of Health membership includes the commissioners, another elected official. It also includes representatives from the local Board of Health, as well as interest groups from the community, and a representative from the tribal members. So there is a lot of moving pieces on this. I have attached in your packet a draft ordinance in which you will consider implementing this new mandate as a result of the last year's legislation. The next step in the process is for you to set a public hearing. In this particular proposal is for you to consider setting a public hearing for March 22nd, 2022 at 3 in the afternoon for you to receive public testimony on this proposed legislative action. This is the timeline that I described to the board maybe a month ago, in which I will be presenting to you a draft ordinance a week in advance for you to consider setting the public hearing. The ordinance is included in your packet. If you have any comments related to the proposed ordinance, please let me know by this Friday. So when you consider setting the public hearing, I will have an ordinance including your comments. So I will ask you to review this ordinance and provide comments to me by this Friday. And on March 22nd, again, you will hear public testimony related to this matter. And at that point, I will ask the board to consider approving this, because there's a lot of logistical elements that we need to go through the recruitment process to make sure that we meet the intent of the law, because this new Board of Health needs to be in place by July 1st, 2022. So it's a little bit time constrained, but that's where we are. And I believe the board has been in discussions about this for quite some time. Any questions?
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Is there any way that we could enter in here something down towards the end of this motion to where it would say, room 280 to accept public comment on a proposed ordinance related to expanding the composition, I think is probably, there's just a word missing there. To expanding the composition of the Board of Health, and then right there slip in as required by state law, so that the public knows we're just not making an arbitrary decision, that it is state law that is requiring us to do this, and it might create some interest by the public to pay attention where otherwise they might not.
So you're suggesting the provisions stays consistent with chapter 7005 of RCW?
I don't know that, I just wanted to, I don't know if that's it or not, but I just wanted to have in the verbiage as required by state law or something, because this is a new requirement by the law, and I'd just like to have the public.
You want to add on the motion related to the House bill?
That could be, but just as long as it somehow says as required by state law. I'm just looking for clarification for the public is all. I don't anticipate it's gonna cause any problems to do that.
Yeah, and I'm okay with those changes. Okay, any additional questions?
No,
No,
thank you. No.
Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item 4B, set a public hearing for an ordinance to amend chapter 202.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is an item that you will consider changing resolution where how the Board of County Commissioners meets, and this related to the regular meetings under RCW 3632.080 requires the Board of County Commissioners to hold regular meetings at the county seat to provide transparency of the business that you conduct. Also, RCW 3632.080 parentheses 3 authorizes the board as an alternative option to hold regular quarterly meetings outside of the county seat. It also speaks about the special meetings and also meeting minutes and everything else. I submitted to you a revised ordinance a couple of weeks ago. You reviewed those changes. And at that point, I mentioned to you that this ordinance has been in the works for a little bit over a year. You already held a public hearing on this, but I believe it was the intent of the board to hold another public hearing just to make sure, since the last public hearing was a year plus. So that is the intent of this item, is to follow the direction by the board, for you to set another public hearing where you receive public testimony on this revised resolution related to updating chapter 2.02 in accordance to the state law as to how the board meets on a regular basis. Any questions?
No questions for me. Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And then with that, we'll move on to item 5A, amendment to extend the Thurston County Chamber Foundation Thurston Thrives Backbone Support Contract for 1 year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you may be aware, the county uses the Thurston County Chambers Foundation to be the fiduciary responsible party to provide services to the Thurston Thrives initiative. Through the process, this has been in place since, I believe, 2019. A contract with where the county set aside $40,000 through the Thurston County Chamber Foundation to proceed with that process. So the result of that is for your considerations to amend the current contract to continue to support this effort. We go through this often, is included on the 2022-2023 biennial budget. And again, it's for $40,000. There has been a little bit of changes on the mission, perhaps, on the strategies related to the Thurston Thrives. I believe Commissioner Mejia has been part of these conversations, as well as the board. And this particular amendment reflects those changes. And again, this is not an additional expenditure to the county. This has been something the county has supported in the past. And I believe the changes they have been proposed, at least from my point of view, are welcome changes. It allows for a little more interaction between all the many different action teams. It really brings the elected officials to a more of a policy-driven exercise of the activities. And overall, I think it was time to perhaps reassess how the Thurston Thrive Community Council is working. Chris Hawkins is here. If you'd like to provide us some perspective, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Hawkins, Thurston County Public Health and Social Services Program Manager on Education and Prevention. I've been involved with Thurston Thrives from its inception back in 2013. And this is just continuing the county's support for a public-private partnership that really started at the end of 2014 and has carried forward each year since then with the leadership and coordination fiscal agency of the Thurston County Chamber Foundation. And Ramiro summarized things well. There are some changes this year, and those governance changes really are to kind of allow for the coordinating council to focus on coordination among the action teams, and there to be not only that elected officials council, but also a funders committee and a data work group that I think will do a good job of serving the core functions of Thurston Thrives, which are to measure, promote, and to sustain this initiative for our community's health improvement over time. Because of those changes in governance, we had to rework the scope of services in that amendment A3 to that Exhibit A, and also the invoice form as Exhibit B, so that becomes Exhibit B3. And those are the main changes going into this year. Looking forward to another good year of work towards our community's health improvement goals, which are consistent with the county's strategic plan and our department's strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, the $40,000, that's new money?
No, that's part of the current budget.
Yeah, I know, but are we adding 40,000 to 160, or we're gonna end up with a total of 160?
That's a total of 160. Yeah.
And so where does the 40,000 come from, the dollar amount? I mean, where's that 40, what pot of funds does that come out of?
General fund.
Okay, general.
And that has been consistent to previous years.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what about the 160,000 total? Where does that all come?
That's the cumulative.
Yeah, but it's all general fund?
Yeah, it has been.
Yeah,
So
I know.
it's not, the 160 is not future. The 160 is up to
You're
today.
right.
So it was 40, 40, 40. This is the third amendment, which adds up to 160 on the contract.
And it's a 3-year contract? Is that what we're ending up with?
This is an amendment they will become the third year. Yes.
This is the 3rd year?
Yeah.
Actually, the amendment is amendment number 3, so this will be the fourth year. It started
Thank
in
you, the
Going
fourth year.
into the
Yeah,
fourth.
My
Okay.
math is not working.
Okay. And besides making an attempt to make our community better, is there an end result that I can point to that by expending these dollars, we accomplished what? I guess that's my question. What can I explain to my constituents when I take dollars out of the general fund, which is always the fund that is the tightest? And in the end, what did we get for this 160,000? I mean, are there some success items, bullet points that we can say, we stopped fentanyl deaths? Or, I mean, I realize that's a stretch, but I'm just trying to use that as an example. What could we point to?
Well, I can give a partial response to that, Commissioner Edwards, and it may be something that we'd want to have the Chamber Foundation come to address, but they've provided updates on some of those accomplishments over each year that's been a part of the contract. And I think what you'd see if you look at the whole of Thurston Thrives is that there have been a number of accomplishments, measurable accomplishments by the action teams of Thurston Thrives. And the Chamber would say that this investment by the county has really allowed the Chamber to bring in additional resources. So this kind of leverages and multiplies the county's dollars to fund something that actually takes quite a bit more resources than that $40,000 each year to coordinate, because this is really looking at the whole picture of health and those social determinants. So there are accomplishments in the areas of child, family, or Partners for Children, Youth, and Families is one of the action teams. They have their own set of accomplishments. I've been supporting the Community Design Action Team. We have a number of accomplishments. And the housing action area is another one that's been very active in the last several years. But that it is really that whole picture of community health improvement across those multiple factors that I think has been the biggest success of Thurston Thrives, is that it's brought people together to work on that bigger picture of community health in the long term.
Let me just bring out one issue. You made some mention to the visiting nurses. I don't know if that's what you called it or not, but the youth issue around visiting nurses. I have been very supportive of the visiting nurse program. I don't know if that connection is actually came about because of this investment. I'm just trying to figure that out. So I can point to a real success story. And if I could use visiting nurses as a success story, that's what I'd do. I'd say, yeah, anytime we can intervene to the benefit of kids, that's always a big plus. So I'm just trying to grasp with.
Yeah, Nurse Family Partnerships, its own program, and preceded Thurston Thrives even as an initiative. But one of the things that came about during Thurston Thrives has been a communities and schools effort that has been led by partner of that Partners for Children, Youth, and Families action team together to try to bring community services more directly into the schools and match those with kids who are in need. So that's an example of something that came about as Thurston Thrives was going on its strategy on child and youth resilience at the time. Now it's called Partners for Children, Youth, and Families.
Maybe, Chris, I don't know if I put you on the spot, but can you outline the many different action teams? And that provides a wider perspective as to what the coordination really occurs. We have the climate action team, and can you walk us through some of the teams included with the Thurston Thrives, please?
County Manager, do you mind if I ask questions first?
I'm sorry.
Because I do have kind of along the same line of questioning that Commissioner Edwards has, and I don't want to stray too far down before coming back to it. And my line of questioning is in regards to, that 40,000, because we are one of the only jurisdictions that's a funder. And so I just have concerns about that, because then it's not just the 40,000, it's also the staff time that goes into this. And just being in Thurston Thrives, I have also yet to see any results from the money that we're investing in this, as well as the staff time that's being invested in this. And so I have along the same concerns as Commissioner Edwards on continuing to invest in something where I haven't seen any results, or I'm not really, I feel like the action councils that have come from it are great. But for example, they're so self-sustaining that they could go on working without Thurston Thrives. They have, created just something so just separate from what Thurston Thrives has become. So just kind of along that same line, why do we have to continue to invest in this?
County Manager, do you want me to elaborate on the different action teams at this point, or because that was a bigger, wider question than.
Yeah, that was the question as to why we continue to invest in this. This has been an initiative of public health social services. That's how originated Thurston Thrives. So there is a lot of legacy in terms of as to how Thurston Thrives was created by the county. And it was, I believe, a strategic move to have the Chambers Foundation to be the fiduciary responsibility to bridge the gap between the public and private partnership. And contributing to this over the last few years, yeah, I agree that you don't see the 40,000 will buy you something that you can put your hands around, because that's not really the intent of this investment. The investment is the coordination. The investment is how we can probably have all the many different action teams to be consolidated to address the needs of the community. So when we talk about the coordination and investing in the coordination, it is difficult to capitalize in dollars and cents or perhaps on an item that you may probably see as a result of that investment, because that was never the intent of that. And it really was the intent as to how we're going to be providing health equity among all the different items and the many different teams to our community. Health equity by itself is very complex and difficult. And it's not like in $40,000 a year, we're going to be achieving health equity in Thurston County. That will not be a realistic expectation. So it is intended to be coordinated. It is intended to make sure that all the different action teams have a joint perspective as to how we have the focus of health equity in our community. So that's my 2 cents on trying to answer that question.
Commissioner Edwards?
This almost sounds like we're trying to kind of pile on Chris there, and I know his heart's in the right spot in doing all this, but it seems like oftentimes government continues when maybe it doesn't need to, and continues to have expenditures. Chris made some mention about Together and how that's worked out, involving children and that type of thing. I can tell you from my perspective with Together, I was there when Together was founded. I've been involved with them since their initial concept with Earl Swift, I believe it was, when she put that together. I've made a lot of monetary donations to them over the past, and I'm not regretting that. I'm just saying, in the end, I mean, like the schools have kind of dropped away from Together now, and I don't know all the particulars about that, but so I'm just trying to see a cost-benefit analysis of what we end up with. And in respect to what the county manager is commenting on, sure, there are things out there that just you can't hardly quantify certain things. It's always hard to quantify a positive. It's easy to quantify a negative, you might say. But I'm just wondering what that cost analysis gives us on money from the current expense budget, because that budget is obviously the tightest budget that we deal with. And when we can't find money to do something from another source, we kind of go to the current expense budget. So I'm kind of with the chair on what are we getting, and don't get me wrong, I think staff is got their heart in the right place and really pushing all the time to do the right thing. But taking that into consideration, I do have a concern about when we continue with things that maybe others in the chair mentioned, well, that's going to keep going anyway. the climate team activities are gonna keep going anyway, as are probably others. And I'm very supportive of the Chamber of Commerce itself in trying to involve itself with the community. But at what point do we draw the line? Other jurisdictions are not participating, and you know, they've got deeper pockets than we do mostly, and available of funds. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know if that's a specific question that you could answer, Chris, at this point in time, or should we have a future discussion on it? But I'm not sure I'm there, and I can't articulate exactly why, because it's such a broad concept that we're trying to cover. So.
Well, I think the county manager described it well, is that it is an investment that is an ongoing investment in having that coordination, having that interaction among those different action areas, because to address some of those bigger challenges that we face as a community that are social determinants of health that are very difficult to solve by just one organization or one party, you really need that collaboration and coordination among parties. And an example of something that was a more recent accomplishment that goes with what County Manager Chavez was saying about bringing health equity to the fore in Thurston Thrives is that the Chamber Foundation and Thurston Thrives was instrumental to having health equity built into the update to the Health and Human Services chapter of the Thurston County Comprehensive Plan just a little over a year ago. So that was something that bubbled up from within Thurston Thrives as they were trying to address health equity, particularly in relation to BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, to bring that to the fore. And they are continuing to make that a strong focus with a series of educational opportunities. So that's another thing that they've done a lot of in recent years. So some trainings on understanding bias and racial equity. So those are the kinds of things that I think this is the buying that's hard to see, but I think it is, as I said, an investment, and it is looking to the future and trying to ensure that there is that system of coordination and collaboration available in our community and drives things forward. And this is what public health is recognizing as a very key strategy to improving health for the long-term community health.
I'm there with you, Commissioner Edwards, but I do want to move on in the sake of time. I'm not there either as well. So, okay, but let's move on. So item 6A, resolution granting a thank you, Chris. Sorry,
No problem, bye-bye.
Item 6A, resolution granting a non-exclusive franchise to Eld Inlet Community Water Association for a water system within Thurston County rights-of-way, and it's connected to our public hearings, and that's item 6A and 6B.
Yeah, those two items are placeholders, Madam Chair, depending on the public hearing that you will be holding this afternoon. Depending on the public testimony, if you do take an action to accept the franchise applications, then those items will apply. And those items are for you to approve a resolution granting the franchise agreements for both Elf Inlet as well as Scott Lake. So, and again, those two are placeholders depending on the public hearing that you will be conducting this afternoon.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, ma'am.
Okay, moving forward to item 6C. Thank you, Craig. Set a public hearing to consider the 2022 update of the Drainage Design and Erosion Control Manual.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a follow-up to the briefing the board provided to the board on February 3rd, 2022, where the updates of the Drainage Design and Erosion Control Manual is needed. It's needed to comply with the state law in order for us to get our stormwater permit. The Thurston County is considered to be a phase 2 jurisdiction, and I believe that conversation happened in the February 3rd, 2022 briefing to the board. Prior to that briefing, staff from Public Works engaged on on a public conversation to make sure the public provided enough perspective and comments before we provided this to the board. And so this particular item is for you to consider. The next step in the process is to set a public hearing for March 29. There's a couple of public hearings in here. Next week we'll define what the date is. There's a lot of public hearings coming up. The date may change depending on the schedule of the other public hearings. But at this point is scheduled for the March 29 for you to receive public testimony related to this particular change. Shannon from Public Works is here. If you have any questions, or she can add additional perspective.
Shannon?
Hi, I don't have anything to add. The summary by the county manager was fantastic, so thank you.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
No, ma'am, no questions, thank you.
I don't either. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6D, set a public hearing to consider repeal of resolution 12083 and proposed resolution regarding speed limits on county roads.
This is also a follow-up on a briefing the board conducted on January 19, 2022, where staff from Public Works provided some perspective as to some changes related to how we set speed limits in Thurston County. So, and it was a very technical briefing, as you may recall. I could probably walk you through the details, but that really provides a little more flexibility as to how the speed limits are set in the county, which includes what we call as professional judgment. And professional judgment that's what we have. Matt Alsaman, we have the brilliant engineers that can provide a professional judgment as to how speed limits can be set in the county, where the current resolution does not include that item, which I believe it is important. Always is a little bit of flexibility to provide a professional opinion in terms of how speed limits are set in the county. Matt?
Thank you for the kind words, Mr. County Manager. This public hearing isn't to this public hearing isn't a meeting to establish speed limits on any particular road. Like the county manager said, this is just a public hearing to consider some revisions to the process and how we evaluate the speed limits on our county roads.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I'll just take Matt at his word. We're gonna do it better. Is that what I'm hearing?
You got it.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't have additional questions for this. Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
As I mentioned, I will, there's two items may have a change on the date for the public hearings. We need to go through, there's a lot of public hearings coming up, so we're trying to, schedule them all, not in one day, but in a couple of weeks.
We'll be here until 7. Okay. And then after that, we'll have our standing items where commissioners will report on board work sessions and assigned committee meetings. And then the county manager will review the Board of County Commissioners schedule for the week of March 1st, 2022. With that, we will adjourn. That concludes our meeting for March 1st. Okay, moving on to our next item, proclamation and awards.
Good morning, Amy Davis, clerk of the board. There are no proclamations for review.
Thank you. And our next item, advisory boards and commissions.
The applications from Glenn Shorno and Chris Dolman for the Agriculture Advisory Committee continue to be listed here. The chair of the Ag Committee has provided us with their recommendation of Mr. Shorno for one of the now 2 vacant farmer positions, and that has been distributed. I've received 1 additional application over the weekend, and we'll include that application and Mr. Dolman's again next week. So would you like to circle back on their recommendation next week after there's time to review and we have a full board?
And also, if I may add related to the Agriculture Advisory Committee, Madam Chair, the board received letters of from the 3 members that have resigned. There's very lengthy letters. I hope you have the opportunity to review those, which I believe it is important, I believe at this point, to the board pause reading those letters and see what the next steps you may want to take in appointments.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Edwards?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so more to come. And thank you, Amy, for this. This is very helpful to know which committees, have empty positions. So thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, and may I also touch on another set of applications we have?
Yes, go ahead.
We included our 2 applications for reappointment for the Emergency Medical Services Council from Cindy Hambley and Margaret McPhee. There have been no other applications received, and if reappointed, each would serve a 2-year term. Would you like to review these and circle back next week as well?
Go ahead, Commissioner Edwards.
I know both of these applicants, and I've served on boards with them. And I would say that we just go ahead and put them on and get it over with for whatever the closest meeting is. So, and I can speak to their qualifications if anybody wants to know about it.
Okay, so adding it to the March 1st agenda, would that work with you?
Sure.
Perfect, we'll do that.
Okay. And I've reviewed their applications and I don't have any problems, or I'm glad that they are seeking reappointment. And there's no other applications pending. Okay, with that, Amy, anything else?
No, that is it.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, any additional comments, questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Moving on to PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. We held the web redesign kickoff meeting last Thursday with the web coordinators and the consulting company, so that project is officially underway. I also held interviews for the Public Information Specialist position that will be dedicated to the project. I made an offer on Friday, hoping to send the formal offer today, and would love to introduce this person to you next Tuesday. And still continuing work on, so we got a design and where all the data and everything is gonna go for the atrium board chambers, and so that's also moving forward. And I think that's all the updates I have for you this morning.
Thank you, Megan. Questions,
you.
Commissioner Edwards?
No questions.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the legislative update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Attached in your packet is an updated report, which you see a lot across. Those are the bills. I'm not gonna go through that report specifically. What I'd like to highlight this morning is the House and the Senate has introduced their own versions of the capital as well as the operating budgets. There is some highlights related to that. On the House, capital budget includes allocations for on the housing and homelessness, rapid capital acquisition, just about 400 million. It includes a housing trust fund for 101 million, and additional investments for housing and shelters for 20 million. Also includes some local infrastructure that addresses state broadband, as well as additional investments on the Public Works Trust Fund. The Senate version also includes similar capital budget requests. There's lengthy, I'll just give you the highlights, by the way. One of the key elements to highlight, at least on the Senate version, it includes a I-5 corridor improvements, which is $92 million on the current biennium, and $150 million on the 23-25 biennium. That is a good investment. I believe the board has supported the investment on the Nisqually River. That will be part of that, and I believe this allocation includes continue the assessment and the design of the corridor itself, that would be I-5 from the Nisqually River all the way south of Tumwater. There is going to be also the governor presented his own version of the budget. So the next step in the process will be the reconciliation of all the three versions, and that will be hopefully done before this short legislative session is ending. But yet to be seen if there's going to be an extension. But I just want to give you an update on the release of the operating capital budgets on both sides of the legislative body. That's all I have for you on that.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think I'm fine with that update. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have additional questions either. Thank you, County Manager, for the quick update. Okay, moving on to Commissioner items, the Chehalis Tribe Road donation request.
Yes, thank you. Attached in your packet is a letter the board received dated January 11, 2022. And this is from the Chehalis Tribe leadership requesting the board to consider donation of some of the county roads within the boundaries of the Chehalis Tribe. So when I received this letter, it brought back a lot of memories, at least from my point of view. So let me take you back. I haven't used that one for a while. So attaches in your packet a copy of the briefing of March 18, 2015, when I was serving as the Public Works Director. And I provided the briefing because at that point it was a similar request from the Chehalis Tribe. So that briefing was taken into the steps, and the board at that time asked me to take the next steps to really start working on a local agreement. So attached in your briefing also is a copy of that agreement that it was drafted. The last date was March 9, 2015, which was very comprehensive in terms of the potential donation of county roads to the Chehalis Tribe. It was on the midst of the state law process that allows for that transfer, because prior to that, it was not an option other than going through the regular vacation process for any county roads, which didn't allow to go through that. So this reflected that particular change in the law. But when we had as I recall, the interlocal agreement, how it didn't move through in the whole process. So I recall there was two key elements on this. The county at that time was asking the Chehalis Tribe not to put those county roads into trust. And the reason behind that is, I believe the county has an obligation to provide access, public access, regardless of the membership, whether it's from the tribe or not, to free flow or traffic on any county roads the county had. At that point, I believe the tribe was not interested in exercising that option of not putting it into trust, because their strategy at that time was to put all those roads into trust. As you know, as soon as any land that goes into a trust, there is really no ability for us to exercise at that point, making sure that those roads are open for the public, for the general public. The other item was on the item 6 on that draft interlocal agreement. It was related to the limited waiver sovereignty immunity. Is really as to where we're going to be litigating, if I may, if in case these terms and conditions of the interlocal agreement doesn't materialize. And we were agreeing at that point that it will not be in the tribal court, They were suggesting they should be. We suggested it will be Superior Court, and they didn't agree on that. And that's how the two elements really didn't come to a point of materializing this. So here we are, they're asking again. At this point, I'm not prepared to provide a suggestion on terms of the next steps. I think this is something the board needs to, continue the conversation. And that is the reason why I included this backup information that it was provided to the board back in 2015. I will suggest for you to read that, the terms and conditions of that draft. And at some point, I will bring this back item again to see where the board would like to move forward on this request or not. So, so at this point, I don't have a recommendation.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Yes, and this might come back to the issue you made just slight mention of Superior Court versus Tribal Court in final decisions on issues. How does this fall on the whole gifting thing of public property and sovereignty and how that all fits? And I thought maybe that might fit into that Superior Court, Tribal Court issue. So is that something we can talk about maybe later? I know we're pressed for time, but I just plant that as a seed. We should maybe at least have that in the conversation.
So, back in 2015, when the board received this request, the whole issue of gifting of public funds, public facility to an entity was an issue. Absolutely was an issue. But just during that time, RCW 39.33, and this is, I believe, on some of the warehouses and the interlocal agreement, at that time was recently amended that allows the county to transfer real property or property rights to the tribe in such terms and conditions are mutually agreed. So it was a concern at that time, absolutely, but the state law allows for that transfer without getting into that conversation.
Okay.
So, and that's how this interlocal agreement at that time was able to get this far, because absent those changes on state law, it was exactly what you are stating. There was difficult to make the case for donation of those roads without having any umbrella.
Oh, okay. And then I just have one real quick, because I think we're going to discuss this later on. And that is, there's some mention in here that there would be a loss of road funds of like $20,000 or something like that if we didn't have this road, but then we'd also theoretically have a savings of $10,000 because we didn't have to plow the road or maintain the road. So anything changed there? I'm just curious how that all fits, and that'll be for a future discussion.
Well, on March 18, 2015, those were numbers then, probably obviously.
It changed, yeah. Okay.
It changed, but I would assume that probably the magnitude and the difference, although will be just about the same, but the dollar amounts will be different.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's good for me, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question in regards, is there a possibility maybe we could lease the, and lease that portion? Because I know that their concerns are, from reading the letters, concerns of access to the road, and they want to maintain it. But is there a possibility of maybe leasing that road and us being able to keep our, whatever we get on road fund and but maybe not charging them like $1 or something like that. I'm not sure how it would work. But is that a possibility even?
I don't know. I really don't.
More to come, sounds like.
More to come. Okay. So with that, thank you for that brief. With that, we'll go to the 2022 Thurston County Fair.
Yeah, this should be brief update. Josh, go ahead.
Great, thank you, County Manager. Yes, this will be a brief update and a positive one. The Thurston County Fair Board has confirmed that we will have a public Thurston County Fair this year, celebrating the 150th fair in Thurston County. So the dates for this year's fair will be July 27th, that's Wednesday, July 27th, through Sunday, July 31st. We have the contracts for a carnival, and it will be open to the public. So great deal. Vendors, food, fun, Thurston County Fair.
We get our stones back.
Right.
And Josh, this is a week earlier than traditional has been, correct?
That's correct. Yep. With all the shifting and COVID, the Fair Board really wanted to secure a carnival, kind of get that old time fair feeling back. And the only dates available for a carnival this year were the week previous than normal.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments, Commissioner Edwards?
No, I think I just want to thank Josh for a lot of work that went into this, a lot of complications to make everything fit, and also to the Fair Board for getting this all coordinated up. And it's a positive for our community. They really look forward to it, especially our young folks involved in ag activities and such. So thank you very much, Josh.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, we have great staff and a great volunteer Fair Board. They work really hard.
Yes, they do. Thank you so much. Okay, so with that, thank you, Josh. We'll move on to other commissioner items. We have 8 minutes. Commissioner Edwards, do you have any items?
Madam Chair.
The county manager has something to comment on.
Public testimony.
There was some public testimony
that's
on.
right. I had marked it, and so I completely skipped over that. So, sorry, Commissioner Edwards, not yet.
You're gonna cut me off short again, huh, Chair? Okay.
Well,
Okay,
last week you received a public testimony from a county employee related to the testing requirements. As part of the resolution, the Board of County Commissioners, the majority, put in place where requiring vaccination to county employees, and in lieu of vaccination, those individuals have the option of weekly testing. The testimony was in terms of the amount of money that is costing those employees they have chosen to go with the option of testing in lieu of vaccination. So the suggestion that I have at this point with your concurrence, and that is on the heels of the governor issuing he will be lifting the mask mandates for indoors on March 21st. There's a couple of elements the board may need to consider holistic related to that particular comment. One is addressing just the testing at this point. First of all, you need to have this as a conversation as a board. The three of you, and whether that resolution of vaccination requirements and testing is something you'd like to continue on, and that is something that I was planning to bring for your consideration anyways. But I think it's not just about the testing element of that resolution, it's just comprehensively how that resolution really should stay in place, not or modify that currently. The second element of that conversation that I was hoping to do is opening the boardroom and how that relates to the masking requirements. Really, that's one of the concerns that I believe the majority of the board had when you decide to close the boardroom. That is the other element that I was hoping to bring that as a matter of the full board to have a conversation. And lastly is really following the governor's news conference last week of lifting the mask mandates for indoors. I'm glad in a way that he gave that timeline of March 21st, and let me tell you why. Because under the county follows the labor and industry guidance, and we need to have updated guidance in order for us to follow suit as to how we're going to be implementing the new guidance of the new direction the governor provided. So, and I believe as part of his the news conference he provided last week, he alluded to the fact the LNI we'll go through the process of updating the guidance. And that will be the premise in which we, as a county, need to move forward. So those are the three elements that I was hoping to bring as a bundle for the board to have a conversation. I was hoping to do that this Thursday during a commissioner's check-in. Unfortunately, Commissioner Menser is not able to attend any of the meetings this week. That put us in the position perhaps to have the holistic conversation with all the board members next week. And that is my suggestion at this point.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yes. Okay, my concern here is that it's now become accepted science that vaccinated people still pass this virus around. And the benefit of vaccination is to the individual that gets vaccinated and is less likely to have an adverse outcome from coming down with this virus. That seems to be the benefit. Although we were told early on that the vaccination was going to prevent us from coming down with the virus. But now they know that's not true. But it does seem to prevent an adverse outcome if you do come down with it. So our requirement that having our own staff people be tested once a week at their expense before they can participate in work just doesn't make any sense. If everyone was tested, it still wouldn't make a lot of sense. And so I'm saying, why are we penalizing county employees and forcing them to pay for something that has no benefit? And the disruption of the whole workforce and process involved. And even after the governor comes out with his adjusted mask activity, I mean, people can wear a mask if they think it's helping them any, but there's a big debate about what that mask is really doing. I mean, I know I have an opinion and I voted against the whole mandate and everything. But that's neither here nor there. Now we've adversely affected our employees, and I see no benefit to requiring employees to be vaccinated because it doesn't prevent them from getting it or passing it on, which it's now obvious in some of our office space where the vaccinated people are bringing the virus in and passing it around to other vaccinated, and I suppose maybe unvaccinated if there's people like that in the office. So I just don't see any benefit other than it's punitive against our employees for kind of not accepting the fact that they had to get a shot. So it was a way out for some, and I think when it was implemented, maybe there was merit. I don't see any merit to it now other than it's just a punitive measure against those employees that have chosen not to be vaccinated for whatever reason, health, religious, whatever it is. I'm not questioning their reason, and I'm vaccinated, so it's not like I'm an anti-vaxxer complaining about this. I just don't see a benefit that we're getting besides penalizing our employees. We're certainly not preventing the workplace from having exposure to the mask. And those people that think that a mask helps them, they can wear a mask all day long, every day from now on, I guess. I think that's the way it's gonna work. And for those that want a little more freedom of expression, they maybe won't and feel a little more comfortable about. I mean, I've been saying for a couple of years now, we're all gonna get this at some point in time. And I think I'm gonna be proven to be correct somewhere down the road. Anyway, so that's why I'm opposed to the testing mandate that's penalizing our folks. So that's where I'm at now.
I'm a completely opposite, Commissioner Edwards.
That's democracy.
With that information, I feel, I do feel like this is a conversation the full board should have. And so I'm not sure if we can move forward. We can move this forward until we have a full quorum.
Yeah, I will bring this item, and again, the three elements that I described to you next week. And then the board will engage in that conversation and see where you want to go. In the meantime, I will respond this afternoon as an overall comment that the board has discussed, and there's further conversation yet to happen.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Look at, we got time too. We went 2 minutes over.
And in fact, WASAC has a meeting at noon today to discuss the governor, so that will be good timing for us to listen.
Okay, Commissioner Edwards, any commissioner items you would like to discuss?
I think we can hold off for a while now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. With that, we are adjourned and we'll be back at 2. Thank you so much.
Thank you.